Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 47.
Congratulations, you showed up. Give yourself a high five in celebration of your success. Welcome to the Cashflow Diary, where new and experienced investors come to take confident action towards their goals. Your host is a family man, a real estate entrepreneur, investor, coach, and instructor. As a master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's Cashflow 101 game, he's inspired many to begin their journey into creating cash flow for themselves and their family. And now, here he is to offer you the tools required to earn the income desired. Your cash flow coach, Jay Massey.
All right, and welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. Glad that you are here. If you've been enjoying the series of different entrepreneurs that are here, because I know I have. If you've been enjoying it, let us know. Make sure that you send in a nice little review on iTunes, because, you know, we as entrepreneurs, we do our best to let as many people know that our business exists. And when you hear somebody or hear something that sounds good, let other people know that it was good too. And one way you can do that, like I said earlier, is just to leave a review on iTunes. So we've been doing a series, for those of you who may not be aware, we've been doing a series with different entrepreneurs that you run into from time to time, who have taken on their desire for cash flow in various different ways. As you guys know, I don't restrict cash flow to simply being, you know, something in real estate. Now, that's definitely kind of where I began and still what I do, but that's not the only way to generate cash flow. So we've got a series of entrepreneurs who have been able to develop their own businesses in various different ways. And at the end of the day, I want you to understand and hear the similarities between all of us and what it takes to create a business, whether that be to you know, an iPhone app, whether that be a real estate. It doesn't really matter what it is that you want to do, but there's so many similar common elements between the process that I think you benefit by having exposure to so many different people. Now, the individual that I have today has lots of energy. So good. That'll be great. You're going to have lots of fun hearing her. And I think you're going to learn a lot about dealing with, I'm going to make a prediction. You're going to learn a lot about getting past any excuses that you might have right now. Because I know for many of us, we think the road has to be perfect and has to be paved. But what's most important is just understanding is that that's not actually that important. Anyway, do me a favor. Make sure that you give your full time and attention right now to Miss Lakeshia Ekeigwe. She is a leadership development coach and consultant, and she's got more different things than she's done than I can even begin to try to sum up. But it's amazing that we were actually able to catch up with her. She's a very, very busy person. Lakeshia, welcome.
Thank you, Jay. That was a nice introduction.
I try. So you're a speaker, you're a writer, mentor, coach, and you do private consulting. It's amazing. You must work on a 26-hour clock, because mine only has 24. I'm trying to grab a complete picture. What is it that you do in your business and as you're helping, you know, businesses generate more cash flow?
So let me start kind of at the base of that.
Okay.
I like to say if corporations are legal persons, I work with their heart, right? So I work at the heart of an organization, and I work to develop leaders, and not sort of in the traditional sense of thinking of having a leader sort of climb the corporate ladder, but I try to work to develop leaders into the best possible model for the organization, the best possible inspirer for the organization, the best possible guide for their teams. I believe that leadership is a partnership, and I think that's one of the biggest gifts that I give to my clients, is that I help them to understand that leadership is not sort of being a head over people, but it's actually being in partnership with them. It is an sort of an unwritten and unstated partnership. If you didn't have people willing to be led by you, then there is no leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're by yourself. So, and people agree to be led for a number of different reasons. Sometimes they agree to the leadership because they need a paycheck. Sometimes they agree to it because they need benefits. But whatever their reason for being in the organization, it's a willingness on their part to be led. So I like for them to look at leadership as a partnership first, and then start from that vantage point. So I hate the word manager as it relates to people, because I don't believe that you can actually manage another human being. I believe that you can manage systems and processes, but not people. So when I work with organizations, I work at the heart of the organization, as I said earlier, to try to get them to see leadership in a completely different way so that everyone's potential is maximized, because people are looked at as really a vital part of the partnership within the organization.
Absolutely. I love that. I mean, hopefully you heard the idea of agreeing to be led. I mean, when it comes to, if to use a real estate side of example, when you're sitting down at the table, negotiating table, whatever you want to call it, the seller is agreeing to be led by you if you're the buyer. If you're the seller, you're trying to lead the buyer down a path that you want to go. You're always leading, and even if you're buying your real estate through a real estate agent, you're still leading. You're leading the team, and they have to agree to be led for many different reasons. I've never heard it put quite like that, and I like that. I like the idea of being aware that there's a reason someone is willing to follow, and understanding that reason is probably key to their motivation. And I don't know what word to use now. If I'm not managing, how do I what am I doing if I'm not managing people? So what is the applicable word, since we don't manage people but we manage processes and systems? What do we call it then?
Well, and to me, it's a more accurate definition of the word leader. So it takes, I believe that not everyone climbing the corporate ladder should be in a leadership role, right? So some of those people should be managing systems and processes, and that's their role. And then others should be leaders. And there's a clear designation between the two paths in my mind. And so I think let's really call it what it is, because I'm sure you've probably, well, I shouldn't say I'm sure, I imagine you've worked for other people at some point in time in your life. Is that correct?
Yes. Boy, have I. Yeah.
Okay, exactly. And so some people clearly were not leaders. They were not inspirational or aspirational. They did not seek to bring out the best in everyone who worked underneath them. And when you think of some of the world's great secular leaders, you think of titans of industry, Lee Iacocca, or Martin Luther King, or Gandhi, or JFK, just people who were able to mobilize people to serve a greater or bigger cause or mission. That's so much different than a manager telling you this needs to go out looking like this, and we have to have consistency, A, B, and C. Don't think outside the box. Just do what I say, blah, blah, blah. Clearly one is leadership and the other is not. So that's what I really get organizations to understand. Don't have people in key leadership positions that aren't leaders. However, they might be a great process manager. I mean, that might be their zone of genius. So put people who really are leaders in leadership roles, people who have a passion for people, and make those individuals your leaders. And people who have a passion for processes and systems, make those your managers or leaders of the departments that manage that kind of work. And so how it impacts their bottom line is that you have now a team that is willing to be led, because now there's a different purpose for them within the organization, and that is they are contributors to something bigger than themselves. And actually studies have found that more than anything, more than more money or more time off or whatever, people want to feel like they are making a valuable contribution to their place of employment. That's what they want more than anything. There was a study, I don't have the statistic in front of me, but it was something like 67% of the individuals that were polled, that was actually their top priority and what they wanted more than anything else.
That's amazing. I teach a concept known as investor identity. If you're hearing that for the first time, it's very similar to what she just said, is that many investors invest with you or you start your business for reasons other than just money. And some of those reasons, they play out in various different ways. But I like what you were mentioning when you said have everybody play in their zone of genius. I love the idea of a zone of genius. This is my zone. This is what I do. Because I often tell people that you should strive to structure your team such that everybody only does that which they do best and nothing else, so that no one's playing out of position, because otherwise it gets challenging to make stuff happen, and it's so much more work. But when everybody's playing in the position that they're playing within their zone of genius, things are so much better, so much better.
Well, and it takes the energy from struggle energy to flow energy, right? If you're struggling, I struggle myself with my own paperwork, right?
Oh my God, yes.
Okay. I mean, and most entrepreneurs are that way. It's like, I want, tax season just makes me want to just sleep for a year. Like, I just don't even want to get out of bed because of course now I've got to pull together, X, Y, and Z, and I've got to do this. So that's a struggle for me. And even hiring someone to train to be able to do what I need them to do, which I do have to do now. My business is at that level. There's no more avoiding it. But the idea of even pausing to train someone to do what I don't want to do is struggle energy for me. Whereas talking for a living is my zone of genius. Inspiring for a living is my zone of genius. It takes little to no effort for me to show up in that way, because that's my area of strength. So I'm always in flow in that area of my work, but my struggle energy is always, my struggle areas are always a struggle because A, they're not my zone of genius, B, I hate doing it, and so I put it off, and then it becomes a bigger problem. So it's the same within your organization. Don't have someone doing something they hate, struggling through it, wasting their energy where you could actually be benefiting from their zone of genius, whatever it happens to be, and really elevate your organization to the next level, because everybody's operating at their highest and their best.
Absolutely. I think what's key to that, though, is seeing how that plays out for each one of us. I find it very funny when you said, I'm trying to hold myself together, and you're like, you can't, do your own paperwork very well. And there have been many times where I just tell people, just do not give me paper. I don't even, and like when people try to hand me a business card, I won't even take the business card. I take a photo of the business card and hand it back to them, because it's like, dude, I'm going to lose that. It's useless. You might as well keep it. I don't know what happened, but when it comes to paper, I'm not the guy. And you're right. You got to place people in their own zone of genius, which is what I was just sitting here thinking about is, there are some, it's not just when you're building your organization, when you're building your company, it's not just about you being in your zone. You've got to be aware that other people have a zone. And then you got to take that extra step and realize that everybody has a zone in some way, shape, or form, in order to make sure that you're getting the most out of their energy as well. Because once you begin to bring other people on board, you don't want them just doing everything you don't like doing just for the sake of you not liking to do it.
Exactly.
But this is I like the way you're encapsulating these concepts, because this is something every entrepreneur struggles through and with, especially when you just start. Now, you made a you made a quick statement, and I don't know if others caught it, but you said that's just where my business are anymore, and I can't avoid it. And there have been so many things that I know myself have said, I'll get to it later. I'll get to it later. We don't need that now. I'm kind of curious to understand a little bit of your process in terms of how on earth did you get started? How did you wake up one day and say, I know this is what I'll do? How did that happen?
Okay, wow. So I spent 20 years in the legal field. Oh, actually over probably nearly 25 years. And I started working as a receptionist in a law firm. And I, worked my way up, became a legal secretary, litigation specialist, and then a paralegal, and then managed offices. And so that was that journey. I always had the heart of an entrepreneur. Like, I could never come to work at 9 ever. Like, I remember one of my bosses asked me, he's like, "What time are you supposed to get here?" And I was just like, I just get here when I get here. And I know that probably sounds crazy, but
not to
my
me.
work was so good that they were willing to overlook that in me, even though, other staff complained and, they just thought I was just this most horrible, bad employee. And I was, because I wasn't an employee. And I never should have been. I spent many of those years, probably half of the 25 years, working as an independent contractor, because the idea of being an employee was, I want to use the right word, devastating almost to me. The idea of someone owning my time out of my life was just incomprehensible to me. I just could not, I can understand that someone could tell me I can have 1 week of vacation. That was just, or 2 weeks of vacation. Like, who are you to tell me that? And so during that time, I was really fortunate because I worked with a lot of people who saw my zone of genius, though they didn't know and I didn't know it was my zone of genius. And what that was being a trusted confidant to them, being capable at my job, certainly, but being a trusted confidant, being someone who was able to guide them to their own truths on their own journey. So, I was just always that partner for them. And at one point in time, I'd say probably about, I don't remember how many years ago, but I read a book called Coach Yourself to Success. The author of that book is Tulane Meadowner, and I highly, highly, highly recommend that book. It's one of the best books I've ever read in my life, and it changed my life. And it's required reading for anyone who signs up as a client for me. Again, it's Coach Yourself to Success. And when I read that book, I saw myself in that book, and I thought, okay, this is what I've been all these years. I'm a coach. I wasn't a therapist. I didn't have a desire to go back through people's painful journeys and painful stories, and I just didn't have that sort of perspective. But coaching as a modality is actually present and future based. So it takes you where you are now and says and asks where you want to go or where do you want to be, and then the coaching process is like a bridge to get you there. And that really appealed to me because that's the kind of person I am. I believe the past is over, and this is not therapy and all of the sciences of the mind are highly beneficial, and everybody needs something different. So I want to make sure and honor and acknowledge that. But for me and my personality and the person that I am, I always felt like the past is over. There's nothing I can do about anything that's in the past. All I control is my here and now, and then what tomorrow will look like. So when I read that book, I realized I already am a coach. I've already been coaching people. Let me find out the right way to do this, and to really understand this modality and this process. I attended Coach U, or Coach University, and which I had a wonderful education through that program. And then I started my coaching business thereafter. And I'll interject just one thing, one other bit of my education and training. So during my years of working, I had several periods of time where, I might not work for a year or, whatever. I would take time off and I would travel throughout Europe and, do these things that were in alignment with my a couple of my core values, one of which is freedom, and my other core value is to be heard. Okay. Well, we actually have about 4, but those are 2 of mine. So, so during some time that I had taken off, I took a program that was put on through the Pan-American Asian Legal Center in Los Angeles, and it was called Leadership Development in Inter-Ethnic Relations. And I really loved that program, and it taught about leadership from different sort of ethnic perspectives and how to get people from different backgrounds to be able to come to conciliation and agreement. So I did that. And then another program that I took a few years later was the mediator training program through the dispute resolution program of the City Attorney's Office of the City of Los Angeles. So I'm also a mediator through that program. And so I took all of that training, my leadership development training, my mediator training, my conflict resolution training, and then my training as a coach, and I started my work in coaching. And that's kind of how I got started on this process.
Wow. So it wasn't wake up one night and say, hey, here I go.
Right.
That's good. And that's the thing is there's an evolution to all of our businesses. For so many people, what you're thinking about right now may not be, and here's the key word. You started with what you knew you valued. I think many, if not all, entrepreneurs have at their core that freedom one for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
And without that one, you might as well just, be an employee, so to speak. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, because entrepreneurs, i.e. provide jobs to employees.
Right.
It's just some people, like you said, aren't cut out to be one. It took me about 26 years of my life before I figured that out too, because I couldn't show up on time. I could never figure out that lunch was supposed to only be 1 hour. That was somehow very foreign to my my way of being. And I had the same, it's so funny. It sounds like I'm talking to the female version of myself, because I had the same stuff. I would do what took some people 8 hours to do. I got it done in 2. And I'm just like, what's the big deal that I got here 5 minutes late? We all know that I'm going to do more than everybody else here. Now, see, my problem was that I actually told people that. So yeah. It didn't go so well. And you have to go on this journey to figure out who am I and how can I be of service, and everyone's journey is completely different. But once you figure it out and you know that you're operating within that zone, the world begins to change, and fast and quick, in a hurry. And it often has a lot to do with skill sets that you already have. And I try to impress this upon my audiences across the world, is to let them know that, hey, you becoming a real estate investor has a lot to do with a lot of skill sets that you already have today. You just don't know it yet. And it's just amazing to me to hear hear it come from a completely different person, from a completely different perspective. I'm just excited. So I'm just curious if your entrepreneurial journey is anything like mine, whereas in you start off excited, you keep going, and then you get hit with something, and you're like, oh my God, what is this? I've never dealt with this before. But then you figure out a way to do it, and then you go up and you go down, and it's not a straight path to what you thought. Has yours been kind of similar?
Absolutely. And this is so, I'm laughing at everything that you said. I got to go back to the 1 hour lunch thing too. When you said that, I would take 2 hour lunches. Like that was my lunch. I was like, 1 hour. I can't even get to where I need to go in an hour. So anyway.
Exactly.
But yes, exactly. So let me give you an example of what you just said about the journeys. So I co-authored my book, The Truth About Being Single, Learn to Reject the Lies, Become Honest with Yourself, and Never Settle Again, with one of my closest friends. And I was single at the time that the manuscript was completed. And we wrote it. It was a bit sort of cathartic. I was 36 years old, actually, when we finished the manuscript. I was single. I knew that I knew the pain and the wounds of being a woman and being single, and I knew other women were experiencing what I thought were these pain spots that were not being addressed in a helpful or in an honest, truthful way. And so single women are sort of told these things all the time. Well, you get to do things that married women don't get to do, or you have the freedoms that mothers don't get to have, or, all these kinds of things. And I thought, I've traveled the world. I've had a lot of wonderful experiences, but those don't replace being a wife and a mother, which is what I always wanted and was part of the vision for my life. So, and you know what, and I'm not happy about that. I'm a happy person, but I'm not happy about that. And I have great self-esteem and extremely high confidence, but you know what, I don't like this. And I wanted to give women permission to say, I'm not happy about being single, but that doesn't mean I'm a happy, miserable person.
Got it.
And then I wanted to give them tips on ways to make sure that they kept themselves happy and joyful and full and centered while remaining on the journey to finding a mate, because it takes a happy, healthy, whole person to attract a happy, healthy, whole person. So, but it was okay to say that you didn't want to be single, and that was really, part of the biggest part of our message. So, as far as it related to my coaching business, I thought, I've got this book, we've been interviewed on the Huffington Post, we've been interviewed by MSNBC. I'm going to coach single women over the age of 35. That was my demographic. That was what made sense. And I did coach some single women over 35 on their journey. And then I coached some women who were under 35. And then I coached their friends would tell their married friends, I have this coach, you should really talk to her. She can help you with this, this, and this. And then it was like my business was comprised of half married women and half single women. Then it was actually more married women and less single women. And then many of those married women were leaders within their organizations, because at that age bracket, 35, 40, 45, now they have positions of authority within organizations. And so that's how I kind of got into leadership development coaching. And that's the space that I've pretty much remained in, and that I'm taking my business from here. So the journey has been really interesting, and my business looks amazingly different than I envisioned that it would look. But I remained open to the way my business was directing me. If I thought I was a good fit for the person or the organization, I didn't stick to what I had said my niche was. Whoever showed up, if I thought that they were a good fit and I could help them, I did. I worked with them. If I didn't, I passed. And so my business has become something very different than what I thought, but I'm enjoying it so much more. And I can clearly see that my entire journey actually led me to be exactly where I am.
Oh man, so well said. Because that same thing happens over and over and over again with each and every entrepreneur that I meet. Is we have an idea, we write a vision, we had a business plan, and we thought it
Right.
was going to be this, but it ends up being something completely different. And I find it interesting, just oftentimes how unwilling we are as humans to be open to the process of adjustment or change, etc. But the path to success and the path to where we need to be usually isn't straight. And as many of you know,
No.
you guys know that we started out technically homeless, credit scores of 398, had no money, medical issues. I couldn't walk and talk, and my wife was unable to eat or drink, period, and almost died a few times. That was the start of the career. I promise you, I wasn't thinking, hey, I know that
Wow.
what we'll end up with is the idea of, raising private capital and helping people and building international buildings and commercial stuff. That wasn't what I was thinking. You can hear the same thing in Lakeshia. What she was thinking isn't where she is today. But here's the thing, and this is why I wanted to say all this. Start where you are with what you have, and that's exactly what you've done. And I appreciate you being an example of that. But there's if it's anything like my journey, starting where you are with what you have brings with it certain challenges, certain struggles, certain things that aren't in place when you want them in place, and certain
Right.
revelations. What has been some of that for you? All right, now let's get over to the cash flow question. You're like, why did you stop right in the middle of your question? She was about to answer. Yes, I know. It's all good. We'll get right back to that in just a second. But we want to make sure that we cover the question from last time. Remember, for those of you that are playing along with us, you send in your answers to the question at 800-689-1764, 800-689-1764, or you email us at cashflowquestion@cashflowdiary.com for an opportunity to win a copy of my upcoming book. The title has changed, everybody. The title has changed. However, the information is the same. We are going to have the book in March. For those of you who have already won and or pre-ordered, at least now you know what's going on there. But anyway, inside the book is a definition. There's a thing that I use that's really a cash flow diary, and that's going to be the title of the book. To help me create business, period. And many people want to know not only how do you raise capital, how do you do multifamily buildings, how do you start from very little, or Jay, I have no money, no credit. How can I get started in business and real estate? That's what's going to be in the book, mostly from how I did it, not anything other than how I did it, not theory, just fact. And you can go from there. So for those of you who want an opportunity to win the book, you got to send in your answer to the question. Again, that's 800-689-1764 or cashflowquestion@cashflowdiary.com. Last time, the question was, as a property owner, why is maintaining a high debt service coverage ratio important? I asked the question that way because that means you got to at least understand what a debt service coverage ratio is. And if you've listened to us for any length of time, you probably heard me talk about the DIP process, data information to interpretation process, so that you have the ability to not only know what numbers are, but understand when you see them what you're supposed to do or not do. A high debt service coverage ratio simply means that you have more than enough money to service the debt, i.e., the mortgage. And the higher the number, the more cash flow you're actually typically generating. Okay, so that's good. But it also could be indication that it's time to refinance. To get that, you could have a situation where you have what I call underperforming equity. Underperforming equity. So when you have a debt service coverage ratio that is too high, that could be that. Now, if you find yourself calling yourself a conservative investor and you like higher debt service coverage ratios, then that's fine. But at the same time, it is definitely a measure to give you an understanding of do you have enough money to service the debt after all of the expenses? And in the world of raising private capital, so when I'm working with private investors, I'll use a high debt service coverage ratio on purpose, because it also means that, Mr. Investor, we have more than enough money to pay you as well, and we'll be able to make some too. So many different ways to use that number. Hopefully that helps. So this week's question: when using the measurement known as GRM, or gross rent multiplier, what does a high number indicate? What does a high number indicate? So feel free to answer that question. Send it in to cashflowquestion@cashflowdiary.com or 800-689-1764. 800-689-1764. Let's get back to the interview.
Well, so as an entrepreneur, and I'll be curious to see what you think about this, the idea of creating a business was a challenge, first of all. In my mind, it was like with coaching, for instance, if you provide a service and then someone pays you. And my service is my time, my mind. I could do it in person, do it over the phone, and they pay you. So now shifting into understanding that you are actually creating a business that you need to run like a CEO, that I think is probably the biggest challenge that I've grown into, because again, that's not my zone of genius. My zone of genius is doing what I do, not managing what I do. So I think that's probably a huge learning for entrepreneurs. The other thing about starting where you are, a couple things that I did do was that I did work with two coaches that had business models that I respected. So I didn't invest, some people will say they invested, hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars. I didn't. I think I invested a few $1,000s to work with business coaches to find out how they modeled their businesses and what software programs they used in their business, to find out what vendors they used in their businesses, to find out what maybe they learned the hard way, so that I could avoid some of the things that they learned. And those were helpful, and I highly recommend people do that. I also then still learned some things the hard way, so because
Yes.
everybody is going to, and so that's another thing. Don't think just because you do take these classes and courses or read these books that it's going to be easy. Being an entrepreneur is the hardest thing. I won't say the hardest thing you will ever do in your life, because there are lots of things that are harder, but it is a very, very hard thing to do. It is not for the faint of heart.
Nope.
You have to really be committed to your vision of you as an entrepreneur. Now, that vision, the journey will change, but the vision of you being your own employer, your own your own income generator, you have to be committed to that. If you aren't committed to that, you will walk away. So I would say make sure that when you start out, you're committed to that. Most small businesses fail within the first 5 years of being in business. I understand why. You have to be really committed. There's a quote that I read the other day that said, an entrepreneur will work 80 hours a week for themselves so as not to work 40 hours a week for someone else.
Exactly.
And it's so true. Expect to double and triple how much time you work a week. You're not going to work less like you think you are at the beginning. You're going to work 2 and 3 times as much as you would work for someone else. So I would say that's something that you need to really be keenly aware of and willing to take on that challenge. With starting where you are, you may feel as an entrepreneur, you may feel a lot of pressure to have so many things in place. I've got to have a brand, I've got to have a tagline, I've got to have a color scheme and my fonts done, and I have to, just all the things. I have to have letterhead and a business card, and I have to have, blah, 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 all these things. The only thing I would tell you that you need to start any kind of business you want to have right now is whatever the tax requirements are in the area you live in, if you need to have a business license or a federal tax ID number, if you're not going to use your Social Security number, find out what you need tax-wise, because you don't want to have any, misunderstandings with the IRS.
Been there,
so
done that already.
So you've got to do that. That's
right.
One thing you do have to do. And the other thing, and what I think is the most important thing, is your existing network. Those are the only two things you really need to have. Don't worry about having a logo. Don't worry about having a brand. Don't worry about having a website. Don't worry about these things. I am in the process of up-leveling my business. So right now, everything about my business was oriented about my book. So my business name is actually a version of The Truth About Being Single. However, working with leadership development, I work with, men, women, married, single, divorced. I work with everything. So The Truth About Being Single isn't an effective business online presence for the leadership development business that my business has organically grown into. So I have my website for the book, which is thetruthaboutbeingsingle.com, but my business is really Lakeshia Ekeigwe, period. And it's Lakeshia Ekeigwe Coaching and Consulting, essentially. So where I have that online presence right now is LinkedIn. And at the moment, I'm using LinkedIn as my free website for my leadership development consulting business. Whenever anyone asks me, do I have a website, I ask them to connect with me on LinkedIn. It has a bio. It talks about some of my, honors and awards that I've received. It talks about organizations that I'm a member of. It has recommendations of people who have worked with me. In a snapshot, it has everything that I would want somebody to know about me on a quick overview, while I am figuring out what I want my online presence to look like in terms of a website for myself. And I'm going to take it up a notch. I'm going to be working with, sort of higher level web developers and also perhaps even a PR team. In this interim space, though, LinkedIn is my website. And guess what? It's mobile optimized.
No doubt, right? It's already done. I love it.
And there are I want to say, aren't there 65 million people on LinkedIn or something like that?
Probably more, but who knows? You're right. No, man, there's so much in what you just said. I mean, from just understanding, many people, they may look and think that, I was born knowing how to even interview people or talk on a microphone or all that stuff. I didn't stop and take classes to learn all that stuff before it was necessary. None of this stuff was there. For about 5-6 years, I didn't have a website either. I just went and word of mouth spread and people said, hey, this guy can help you use your retirement plan, invest, what, blah, blah, blah. And he buys buildings and all this other stuff. And it's just so funny to me how similar, even though we're serving completely different people with completely different products and services, the path, the process, I hope you guys are hearing just how similar it is. And you start where you are with what you have. It doesn't really matter. I think you'll find this funny, Lakeshia. I often use an example where when people, come to me and saying, well, I need all these things before I actually get started, I simply ask them, a series of questions that starts with, imagine you had a daughter who was maybe, 15, and she comes to you today all stressed out about, Dad, I need my wedding dress right now. And you're like, really? Why? Because there's a whole list of things that should have happened well before she needs that wedding dress. And it's just amazing how knotted up we get. And what's interesting, and I think this is the sad thing, that is what prevents most entrepreneurs from even starting, is that they're not willing to do what you did. They're not willing to just start with what you have. We're too caught up thinking, oh man, if all I have is a profile on LinkedIn, what's going to happen? And I don't know how to tell people. I'm like, look, I have raised millions of dollars and done tens of millions of dollars worth of real estate from a Facebook profile.
And I believe you. Seriously, the other thing, I got to add a third thing to the most important thing.
What's that?
And really pay attention to this, people. Have a way for people to pay you. That's the other most important thing.
That is so funny. You're right. I had to learn how to even. Oh, you got to pay me. Who do I make the check out to? Good question. I'll be right back. I mean, where does it? I don't know. We're not born knowing these things. You learn them, and that's so awesome. That is so awesome. So, I guess then I'm just kind of curious. Can you tell? I believe you. It's just you seem to have a passion for working with women, and now that it's just grown, so I'm assuming you're okay with working with guys too. When it comes to your perfect idea of what it is that the solutions that you provide and how you help people, who is that perfect person that you help?
So I would say, yes, I work with actually quite a few men now that are leaders within their organizations. So the perfect person for me to work with is someone who is a leader of an organization that wants to have the organization be one of maximum flow and minimal struggle and minimal conflict. And someone who's really willing to take their organization to a place where everyone can feel like they are an essential part of the success of the organization. Some leaders are very egomaniacal, some business owners. Their business is a reflection of them. They don't want anyone to look as intelligent as they are. They don't want for anyone to they don't want to be in competition with anyone within their organization. So they want the claim to fame for the success. That's not my ideal client. My ideal client wants to have a successful organization that's built by a team that is essentially conflict-free and is cohesive and collaborative. And so I will work within that organization to help them accomplish that. So that's really who my ideal client is.
Got it. And I love that concept that of who your ideal client is, and here's why. I've often told people that I strive to be the dumbest person in the room. Period. That's my goal. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean I'm not intelligent. It means I'm just the dumbest person in the room. And my team knows more in their specific area than I do. And at any time, I'm the one that knows the most, we have a problem. And and I just don't ever want that to happen. And I think that's perfect for you. So I'm actually kind of curious now. Would you say someone is listening and they're thinking about, they're going, yeah, I resonate. I don't want to have I want 2-hour lunches, and I want to be 5 minutes late to work and not feel made to feel guilty. And one thing that really got under my skin one day is that my oldest daughter got sick in school. They called me at school or at work, and they made it seem like I was doing something illegal just to go pick up my own kid. I'm like, dude, leave me alone. I'm going to go pick up my own kid. And that stuff was just so frustrating to me, to the point to where, you get to this place where you have to do something about it. And you can't. And yeah, I got to the place where I was so mad. All I was really mad all the time. And it was like, either you're going to sit there and stay angry, or you're actually going to do something about it. Because if all you're going to do is sit there and complain, you're going to end up being like everybody else. So you don't want to do that. And what I find, what I'm asking is, would you work with someone who is, say, brand new in business in any way, shape, or form?
I would. I would. It would depend on what they were looking for. My how my expertise would complement what they're looking for. So if they wanted to know, how I would, if I were them, where I would start
Right.
in business, sure, I would do that. In fact, I would be happy to do that. I actually have a coaching program that I created called the Confident Mediator Mentor Program, where I mentor mediators to starting their own mediation businesses, which is actually going to be a booming field in the next few years because of what's happening within the court systems. A lot of the courts are shutting down because the city governments don't have the money to keep them open 5 days a week and full dockets on the court's ledgers. It's just not possible. So yeah, that's something I would do. Yeah.
Got it.
I was going to follow that, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, well, because here's, I'm thinking, and again, I'm just doing what I do, is that if I'm listening to you, one of the things I want to do is I want to build my team right from the beginning. I want to go in with the right, mindset, and if that's going to cost me an hour or two of your time just to make sure that I'm going in the right direction to begin with, I think it makes sense for me, and I'm kind of wishing I had a Lakeshia by my side, a few years ago when I got started. There might have been a few things I could have avoided, but it's all good, and it's just all these little things are things that there are just so many extra details. Because one thing that you said that I think is beyond truthful is that being an entrepreneur is by far one of the most challenging things. Having the belief that you can provide a product or a service and develop cash flow for yourself and investors or your family is a lofty goal, and it does force you to places that you have never considered. You didn't know they existed, and you're like, wow. And but life becomes so much more real to you. And I'm just kind of curious. I tell people all the time, I feel more alive than I've ever felt in my entire life, and I think it's because I'm so engaged in everything that goes on, and because as an entrepreneur, you have to be. What would you say? Would you feel very similarly? I'm just kind of curious.
No, I absolutely agree with that. You don't have time for mundane activities anymore. There's just no time for it. So, and there's no time for people who waste your time. There's just no time for that. So a lot of things that you might have been tolerating in your life before, because the amount of time you can allow for them to exist within your world just isn't there. So,
right.
So just stuff just drops off.
It does.
People drop off, activities drop off. So circumstantially, things that were maybe taking your time in a way that were not serving you, and maybe you didn't even realize it. Maybe it was even, a family member or somebody you felt obligated to, help them manage their lives in a way, or things like that. Those things just drop away. So things that might have been burdening you before just aren't there because you don't have the time for them to be there. You set a higher bar for other things in your life because you're like, doggone it, if I'm going to work this hard, I expect other people to work as hard. And I'm talking about, the barista, the barista at Starbucks. You know what I mean? It's like, no, I want my latte the way that I asked you to give it to me.
Exactly.
So they're just things that you show up differently because your time is at a premium now. You are trying to accomplish many things in a shorter amount of time. So, and you're always in the present moment. You don't have time to really think about the past and the future you're actually trying to build. So you're very present-centered, and I'm a very present-centered person anyway. That's just my nature. So I feel like part of maybe why you feel, the way you describe it I like, is that you felt very much alive, is that you do spend more time present-focused. You have tasks at hand that you have to accomplish. You have got to make this work. For some of us, You might have started your business with your retirement savings or with every last dollar you had in the bank. You might have borrowed money from family members. You're kind of in a do or, quote unquote, die situation. And really most of us live within our comfort zones. So becoming an entrepreneur definitely pushes you outside of your comfort zone. And so you experience things in a very visceral way now, that when you're numbing yourself through a job you hate, or a job that's not inspiring any kind of passion in you or doesn't allow you to leverage your intellect to its maximum potential, then you are numb for a lot of that. And you have to be. You have to numb yourself. So once that numbness is removed, yes, you do feel like, oh, yeah, okay, I'm thinking in a different way. I'm critically thinking about things. I'm objectively thinking about things. I'm creatively thinking about things. So I would agree with that statement.
Yeah, I think in some ways, it's the first time that people are actually thinking at all.
Yeah.
You haven't been for quite some time because we've been responding to what we're supposed to do, what time we're supposed to show up, how long lunch is supposed to be, and all that other stuff. Yeah, we just won't let that one go because that one for some reason that one was painful for me too because I hated that. I'm like, I just got my food, now I got to go back. Wow. Anyway, so many things. As we wind down here, I'm kind of curious if there was one thing you'd like people who are thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, whether that be a business owner, a real estate investor, or just going into business the first time for themselves, what would you want them to know? What bit of advice would you like to share with those that are listening to you right now?
Oh, wow. Okay, so a few things. My first thing is this. Don't let anyone limit your vision or your potential. People are going to tell you what you cannot do or cannot accomplish. Sometimes it's because they're jealous. Sometimes it's because, like the saying says, misery loves company. Mediocrity loves company, wow. Right? So people will try to keep you in mediocre space along with them because then they don't have to see themselves in the reflective mirror that you're holding out for yourself of something, bigger, bolder, different, better. So when people, by making little comments sometimes, say things that limit your vision or that try to limit your vision or dim your potential, just don't own it, don't listen to it, and set and establish really strong boundaries that unless they can say something that is encouraging and helpful, that they should not say anything to you at all. And I don't allow negative talk about my business or myself in my life at all. I don't allow it. And that would be probably the best bit of advice I can give people because you would think that most people would be happy for your success. If people don't dream as big as you do, they don't understand you. They can't comprehend you. So you are asking someone to come along on a journey with you that they don't have the mindset or the bandwidth to even be on with you. They it's. I wish I had a good analogy for that. I'll have to come up with one at some point. But they just can't. They cannot do it. They don't have the same vision. So don't invite people along for the journey who shouldn't be on it with you. They will weigh you down. They will discourage you. They will frustrate you. They will make you question yourself and your dream, and it will make your journey that much harder. Be fiercely, I don't want to even use the word defensive, fiercely protect your vision and your dream. Fiercely protect it. That's what I would say. Other than that, what I would say is really be careful about the way you spend your money. if and here's what I will say. You know something that no one else knows. Your journey and your experience is unique to you. And there is value in that. One of the coaches that I worked with used to say there's gold in your story. So understand that people will pay you for the nugget of gold that is in your story that is a solution to a problem that they face. And someone is looking for your knowledge set and your expertise right now. You know right now something that someone needs to know. And someone will pay you for that. And you don't need a flashy website, and you don't need a logo that spins and glows and has music behind it. You don't need all of that. All you need to do is to be connected with that person who needs what you have. So stay connected to your network. Let everyone in your network know what you are getting ready to do or what you are already doing. And then ask them to refer anyone to you that they know might need your product, your service, etc. Ask them for it. Chances are they've asked you for a favor or two in the past, or you've done something for them, and I think it's totally appropriate to do that. But your already existing network needs to know what you're doing, so let them know. Start where you are, right? Before you try to pay people to, for referrals or emails or anything like that, just start where you are in your existing network. And so be careful how you spend money. Don't spend it on things that you don't need. And this, I guess, is the final thing I would say. Don't try to recreate someone else's business. Be focused on creating your own business that represents who you are, the best of who you are as an individual. There's enough market share for everybody out there. Apple and Microsoft and Samsung, they're all out there, and we all have one of the three in our home somehow, somewhere, right? Exactly. Some of us have three of the three.
Yeah, right.
So you know what I'm saying? So don't try to recreate what somebody else has. Just be yourself, be your own business, and be focused on attracting business to you instead of hard selling yourself. If you feel like you have to hard sell yourself, then chances are the person that you're trying to hard sell to is not the best client for you, and it's probably going to be a struggle energy relationship. But where you have a connection where you say what you have to say, that person connects to you, they hear you, it resonates with them, that's your ideal client. And that's who you should spend your energy on, not trying to convince someone to do business with you, but attract the people who will synergetically be a right fit for you. I think probably those would be the best bits of advice I could give.
That's amazing. It's just, at some point, people are going to wonder if you and I are related, because we have said almost the same things over and over again, and it's just amazing. I definitely just want to make sure that I say I thank you for taking the time and depositing that time right here with our listeners so that we can all benefit. I mean, I've learned new things like up-leveling. That's going to be a term that I think you guys are going to hear from now on, because I kind of like it. And just understanding that each of us have a zone of genius, and that we can play within it and create a solution. And all of us have nuggets of wisdom within our golden story. So, Lakeshia, I am definitely glad that you, as I said, took the time to be here. If you want to catch up with Lakeshia, you know that you need to catch her on LinkedIn. And I will spell the name just in case so that you know it. It's Lakeshia. And then the last name is Ekeigwe. How'd I do?
You did just great.
Perfect. Thank you for being here. And you, it's been wonderful learning more about you and talking about you. Please keep going out there, changing more lives.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate your energy and what you're doing with your show. Please keep it up. It's refreshing, and entrepreneurs need this kind of support. It was my pleasure to share anything that anyone was able to take. It was my pleasure to share, and thank you for having me.
Awesome. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for investing your time with Jay Massey and the Cash Flow Diary. When you have a moment, please visit iTunes and leave a positive comment about the show. And go now to our website, cashflowdiary.com, to take advantage of our free business building course, Cash Flow Foundation. Gain the knowledge, understanding, and skill that will teach you how to never need a job again. Until next time.